Welcome to Music Mania. I am your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, and today we are talking about all the new albums and EPs that I checked out in August 2025. I gotta say, August was an incredible month for music for me personally. There are going to be plenty of takes in this video that a lot of people are probably not going to agree with. In fact, I know several are hot takes just right off the top of my head, but we have 21 of these releases to get through compared to only like 5 or 6 that I listened to from July. So yeah, August was pretty big, pretty heavy, a hefty month of releases. I have a lot to get through, so let's just kind of jump right into things. We're going to be ranking everything from my least favorite personally to my most favorite. So like I said, we've got a lot of albums to talk about. So now we're just going to jump right over to my desktop and notice that my face cam is going to be in a slightly different position than normal. That's because down here on Music Board, where my face cam is covering right now, is an area where Music Board will advertise like other things that I have reviewed, and in that case, at least for the purposes of this video, means a bunch of stuff that is going to be spoiling parts of the video because I reviewed everything on here ahead of time this month as opposed to last month where I did not. So yeah, like I said, face cam in a weird position, but we're just kind of going to go with it. You can see on screen, my least favorite release of August was still by To The Grave. I feel like I have a pretty unpopular opinion when it comes to The Grave. I don't love a lot of their stuff. Their debut album was pretty good, at least when I was getting into deathcore. A lot of what that album was doing was comfortable enough, but just pushing my personal boundaries with the genre so that I enjoyed it. But then Epilogue came out and it was just global warming with a bunch of bonus tracks, and most of those bonus tracks just weren't really my thing. They were a little bit too out there. One of those tracks was incredible. Miserable Summer is like a really, really, really great song, but that's like the only song by these guys that I feel like I genuinely adore. And basically everything else they've released has been hit or miss. This was definitely the case of miss. I did not like either of the singles that came out for this or that I listened to for Still, and none of the rest of it was enjoyable at all. Like, I just did not like it. I guess DNA Do Not Amputate was like the only song that I could say I sort of liked. That's like maybe the only thing that kept this from being a half star. So yeah, I did not enjoy Still very much. Next up, we're going to talk about Bride is Blasphemy by Chevelle, which is an album that I don't think it's objectively terrible, but I did not listen to very much of it. The vocal decisions made with this album, and I guess I'll go ahead and click on the album here so you can see the cover. For some reason, my review, it's not showing the cover on here. I've not listened to a bunch of Chevelle. I have a bunch of friends who really like them, but this being like my first real attempt at listening to them, it didn't really click. Like I said, a lot of the vocal decisions and stuff just weren't really working for me. Definitely was not for me. I don't think what I listened to was bad per se. It wasn't bad to any degree. It was just a case of like, this isn't really for me, so I'm not really gonna bother finishing it type of thing. I don't have very many of those moments, but Bride is Blasphemy was definitely one of those moments. In 19th place, we're going to talk about Deftones, and this is going to be a hot take here. I know this one's a hot take because if I go here, you can see where a whole bunch of other ratings and stuff are. Basically, all of my friends on Music Board have rated it quite highly. Parker might be the only one that hasn't. I didn't really like this, but you also have to understand the context that I'm not a huge Deftones fan in the first place. Like, I'm just not super huge on this band. I've never really got into them. A lot of the vocals and stuff doesn't really click for me. A lot of the songwriting is just kind of okay. So I've had songs now and again that were enjoyable, and like the first half of Private Music was actually pretty good. I liked the first half of it a good decent bit. I was like, is this where Deftones is finally going to click and I'm going to finally like them? And then the back half just decided to focus on the things that I wasn't liking about the album as much, and that kind of ruined the experience and solidified the fact that I've listened to a handful of Deftones albums before. Like, I don't even really like White Pony that much, and that's a hot take. I don't like either their first couple albums either. It's just not for me. This band is not for me, and this was like a final opportunity. I'm like, okay, everybody's really liking this album. Let's see if I do. Let's see if it will finally be the moment that clicks. It was not the moment that clicks, and I regret that. I really, really wish I liked Deftones, but I just don't, and that's a me thing. So, you know, Anyway, next up we're going to go to Ricochet, the new album by Rise Against. I've not listened to basically any Rise Against before. This was like a first full album experience for me with their work, and it's fine. It's not an offensively bad album, but based off of the way that a lot of other people are reacting, like if you're used to their early material that is considered to be pretty good. I suppose I should actually reference this here where you can see it, given where my camera is. Like people who like early Rise Against, like 2008, what is that album called? Like The Fall of Ideals or something? That might be a completely different band. But their 2008 album is one that people really like. I've not listened to much Rise Against. Ricochet was my first time, so I kind of went into it with low expectations just based off of reputation, and it was like, it's okay. Like, it's not my least favorite thing in the world, but it is absolutely not something that I'll ever listen to again. I'll still explore more Rise Against at some point in the future, but there was basically nothing memorable about this album. Next up, we shall talk about Genosis by Gnosis, and again, this is a case where the album art isn't showing on my review for some reason. This is an album that I respect more than I actively enjoyed. I definitely respected the kind of eclectic nature of it, how many different sounds and styles and stuff are being gone for, and how varied it is across the entire release, but as a whole, it didn't fully work for me. Like, it's good, it's decent, there are a couple songs that I like a lot, but like I said at the start here, it's an album that I respect more than I actively enjoy. Definitely do not dislike Genosis, but I didn't love it either. In fact, I don't even know what I guess there's only a couple ratings, and they're not too much higher than me anyway, so in either case, that's my take on that album. Next up, Genesis Part 2, EP by AotY. This EP managed to get onto my radar at some point over the month, and at around the same time that I listened to this EP, I also listened to Genesis Part 1, the previous EP from earlier in the year. Genesis Part 1 was incredible. I really, really like that EP. This one's good. Like, it's not bad, but it's definitely a huge step down from Part 1, so, you know, take that as you will. It was still an enjoyable EP, but by far not a favorite. The next release that I would be talking about at this point would be Kingdom of Giants' Burning Chrome, but I can't actually do anything with that because sometimes new releases just take a little while for the pages to actually work on Music Board for some reason. So like you'll see it trying to load and it'll just say, you know, page not found. I like this EP. Definitely nothing special, but not anything terrible either. I like it. If you're a Kingdom of Giants fan, you'll enjoy it. If you're not a Kingdom of Giants fan, you won't enjoy it. But it's just one of those things that's like, yeah, I like this for what it is, definitely, but not anything that I'm going to revisit anytime soon. Next up, we shall talk about Call of Karen's Tales of Tragedy, and this album is good. It's really basic as far as deathcore is concerned. It's definitely not pushing any boundaries whatsoever, but it's good. It's enjoyable. I definitely don't dislike it. I liked it quite a bit. But like I said, it's nothing super special. It's nothing unique. If you like just basic, especially like somewhat more classic deathcore, you'll enjoy this for what it is for sure. Next up, we'll talk about Reconstruction by Lecrae, which is a very random release. I mostly talk about metal and metal adjacent type of stuff when it comes to my music listening, but I do listen to some rap, and Lecrae is a rapper that I follow. Reconstruction was a good album. I like it more than the 2020 album that he did, which is basically the last time that I'd listened to Lecrae. It's been a long time since I've listened to any of his stuff, and I like this album a good bit. There are a handful of tracks that I really do not like, but there are a solid chunk of tracks that I actually liked quite a bit, so I want to go back and re-explore a little bit more of Lecrae's work. I do recall a good bit of it quite fondly, and like I said, I like Reconstruction a lot more than Restoration back in 2020. But yeah, definitely good if you like Christian themes and ideas in music, and if you like rap, give this a shot, but it's probably not something that's going to blow your mind either, so keep that in mind. Next up, we'll talk about, returning back to the metal theme, Daybreak, the new Woe Is Me album, and this thing is good. I wish I liked it a lot more than I did. The real sin that Daybreak committed was coming out on the same day as a couple of other albums, which we'll talk about later, that I loved a ton, whereas Daybreak was just good. So basically it's a comparative race where like I want to like this more. On paper it is definitely something that I should enjoy a lot, as far as the way that melodies and heavies are incorporated, the very poppy style choruses and stuff, the vocals. I really love the clean vocals from What Was Me. Incredible stuff, super catchy, super engaging, really great. But the album as a whole, Daybreak, is just, it doesn't fully click into place. There are a few songs that are really good, but not all of them really strike that balance the way that I feel like they should. And again, this album came out on the same day as a couple albums that I really love, so it's hard to be like, yeah, this album was a favorite of August, because it wasn't. But I definitely did want to like it more than I did. I didn't dislike it at all, for sure, but I wanted to like it so much more. So in that way, it was a disappointment. Next up, we'll talk about Lonely God by Fit for a King, which is an album that, again, another case of like, I wish I liked this a lot more than I did. In fact, there's actually a little bit of me that's like, why do I have this ranked above Daybreak? Is it because I think it's a better album, technically speaking? It's probably because I think it's a better album, technically speaking. But as far as my personal enjoyment, Daybreak should probably actually be above this. So I'll probably be editing that later in the video when we get to the full ranking, so you can see it all side by side. Yeah, anyway, Lonely God is okay. As far as Fit for a King is concerned, they're not my favorite metalcore band. They're a band that I should like more than I do. But outside of Dark Skies, none of their albums have really hit for me. Like, I enjoyed The Hell We Create. I also enjoyed The Path for what it was. But I haven't listened to all of their albums, and the ones that I have listened to outside of Dark Skies, like I said, are just, they don't all click for me. Not to be anything super special, and Lonely God is kind of that. It's an album that I feel like I should really love, but I just don't, and I'm not entirely sure why that is. Maybe I need to re-listen to it at a different time. Maybe it was like I just wasn't in the mood or something. I don't know. But either way, I did not like Lonely God nearly as much as I feel like I should have. Next up is another recent EP release, Part 1 by Bleak, and this artist page on Music Board. Music Board is weird in that artist pages, if there's multiple artists with the same name, Music Board compiles them all into the same page, which, you know, makes sense. But in the case of Bleak, like, man, where even is the stuff? Like Sightless here, and Wolves up here, and Bleak right over here. These three are the only singles that actually belong to the Bleak that I'm talking to, and therefore Part 1 here is the only thing here that actually applies to the Bleak that I'm talking about. But it's another case of the EP just isn't loading on Music Board right now because it's brand new. Nobody else is really looking at it, so it just hasn't compiled yet. But I enjoyed this EP a good bit. As far as Thal is concerned, I'm not huge into Thal, and a lot of times when I do like Thal, it's usually in shorter context. So if you think like, what is it called? The New World or something like that by Alt last year in 2024. That was, I think that like barely made my top 10 albums, and that was because it was Thal that I enjoyed and was also short. I think it was only like 20 something minutes long. Part 1 here is like 15 minutes. It's only a handful of tracks, so it doesn't wear out its welcome. It doesn't overuse ideas. It also doesn't do a whole tone with like the alien noises and stuff that like get a little bit over the top as far as Thal is concerned. But I like Part 1 a good bit. I really liked this EP, definitely for what it is. Solid. Really enjoyed it. Even though I'm not huge into Thal, this was an example of Thal that I did like a good bit. So now we'll talk about in the proper top 10, because I'm pretty sure that EP there was actually number 10, so I think this is number 9 if I'm not mistaken. Thousand Below's Buried in Jade is a good album. It's not quite as memorable to me as their previous album back in 2022, but that's probably just because there weren't really any songs on it that were really special that way, because their previous album was weird in that there were a couple of songs that I actually like have hidden in Spotify because I just don't enjoy them enough to experience on that full album experience every time. Buried in Jade is a lot more consistent. Every track on it is good. There's none that I would consider skipping, but there's also no songs like Sabotage back on their previous album. And Sabotage, incredible. One of my favorite songs of all time. none of those types of moments on Buried in Jade, unfortunately. So it's kind of a give and take. I think both albums I would actually probably rate about the same, but as far as my personal sentiment, I don't know. If you want a consistent record, Buried in Jade is a lot better, but if you want better standout moments, I think that their previous album stands out more. One of the things that I just like about Thousand Below is the vocals, and I think the previous album showcased the uniqueness of those vocals a little bit more, so that was definitely part of it. Oh, and on the topic of vocals as well, if you like Noah's vocals from Bad Omens, check this out, because the vocalist definitely emulates that kind of style a lot in here, and it works pretty well. I would recommend that for that alone. Next up is a definitely a little bit of a different vibe, more hardcore, a little bit heavier type of style here, is Fox Lake's New World Heat. This is an album that I really enjoyed just on like a primal level. This is like if you just want something that smashes, this is good. I'm a fan of, man, what's the artist called? I'm pretty sure I wrote it in here. Yeah, Afterlife, the band Afterlife. I listened to Afterlife a good bit in like 2017, 2018, kind of that middle of my high school years experience. If you've heard of them and if you've listened to like that EP and that album, they're good. I like Afterlife for what they are a lot. They were definitely a vibe. New World Heat is that type of vibe. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just smashing. It's kind of a hardcore style, like new metalcore. I believe I actually used that term in the review as well. Yeah, right there. New metalcore with hardcore flavor. Fun stuff, but a vibe that I feel like I would have liked a lot more like 5-7 years ago as opposed to now. I still enjoyed it now, but I'm not nearly as neurotic now as I used to be back in high school, so I have a hard time really digging into this style, and like it's not as cathartic, right? And because it's not as cathartic, I don't actively enjoy it as much. It's kind of a weird thing, but I still really liked it for what it was. Like I said, it's in the top 10 releases for August for me. I liked it. Next up is Sugar Spine's Violent Heaven, which is by no means a super unique deathcore release, but the vocals help it to stand out a little bit, and the EP being pretty short, it kind of runs through a couple of ideas. Again, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't overuse any of the ideas that it's going for, and it's very enjoyable as a result. I really liked Violent Heaven, definitely for what it was. Like I said, it's not super unique. It's not pushing any boundaries really, but if you like heavier core, and like I say here, that isn't super breakdown focused, you're probably going to like Violent Heaven a decent bit. It's definitely not a bad release. It's not a perfect release, but I loved it a lot even still. Next up, we'll talk about The Lost Years by Dreamwake, and this is another case where like I might put Violent Heaven above this, and that's just because I liked the brevity of Violent Heaven and what it was doing, whereas The Lost Years kind of runs a little over long. So like it's hard for me to say I recommend it more or anything like that, or even that I enjoyed it more. I would be less likely to return to The Lost Years, but to be fair, part of why I would be less likely to return to The Lost Years is because of its particular sonic style. There's definitely a review over for this album. I don't know who did it or where it is, but somebody rated this a little bit on the lower end and said like every single song sounds the same, and that's kind of valid. Every song on The Lost Years does that sound the same. If you've listened to the first 2 tracks, you know exactly what all of the rest of the songs sound like, but if you like that sound enough, you're not going to care. And to be fair, I also think that part of the reason I respect this album is that it's pretty lengthy. Not often this sort of core-ish style or core-adjacent music goes for anything longer than 30 to 40 minutes anymore. This album's like 54 minutes, so that's going to definitely run a little bit long, and because a lot of the songs are very similar in their style and their structure and stuff like that, it might run a little long. It might get a little over the top. You know, it's one of those things where I don't think I'm going to listen to this very much because of that. But if I'm looking for this particular style of music, it is so good. It's got like a shoegazy type of stuff mixed with metalcore elements, and the vocals are good. There's a lot of focus on melody that's really enjoyable. I think The Lost Years is really great. It's just not something that I'm going to return to a million times, and it's pretty long. If somebody were to criticize this for being way too long and reusing ideas like being repetitive, or like I said, every song sounding the same, those are kind of valid complaints. But if you like what this is doing, you're going to really like the album. So give the first couple tracks a listen and you'll know whether probably the whole album's going to be for you. Although I guess at that rate, I would say listen to the last couple tracks actually, because I'm pretty sure my favorite songs were the last couple of songs. Oh, I have no idea what's even been happening, but apparently fat fingering F12 just completely breaks everything. So, yeah, that was fun. Anyway, we're going to move on to the next album, and this is definitely one of those cases that I was mentioning earlier at the beginning of the video of like having a hot take, something that not very many people are going to love to see me rank, but Attack Attack 2 was really, really enjoyable for me. If you want some reference for how the broader community thinks about this album, this is the average rating here. I am one of the 2 people that rated it 4 stars or above. So that kind of puts things into perspective. If you really like old Attack Attack, probably you won't like this very much because it's not old Attack Attack, but like I don't have a connection to old Attack Attack. In fact, I've listened to basically none of their old classic stuff. As far as this individual album is concerned, though, I really like it. Like, it's just super fun. It made me smile a lot. It's something where in this very review I say, yeah, it's generic, it's uninspired, although I sort of disagree with that take, because generic and uninspired doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, especially if you're just trying to be fun, and I think that's what Attack Attack is trying to do with this album. I think this record is super fun. I had a lot of fun with it. I smiled a lot. I kind of laughed at a few tracks. The singles were all like tracks that I was like, yeah, this is super fun. If the whole album is this kind of vibe, I'm going to love this. And the whole album was that vibe, but also better. You know, it's immature in certain ways as well. Like if you want a mature album that is more serious or anything along those lines, like you're not getting that here. But I don't think that was the point. Very obviously that wasn't the point. As far as what Attack Attack were trying to do with this album, it worked for me. I really liked it. It's going to be a hot take, but this was my 5th favorite album of the month. Next up, Baby Metal's Metal Fourth is another maybe hot take. I mean, the sentiment around this is definitely a lot higher, but that's because Baby Metal has their fans. I've not listened to a ton of Baby Metal. What I have listened to in the past has been kind of okay for the most part. Not good, or rather not great, but also not bad. This was a case of like, I just had fun with this. You know, if this is an record for you, it's going to be a record for you and it's going to hit, and that was how it felt for me. It was a case where there were definitely a few tracks on here that really don't work for me. I reviewed, I believe last month in July, Slaughter to Prevail's new album, and a feature, or rather a joint collab song that Baby Metal and Slaughter to Prevail did, appears on both this album and Slaughter to Prevail's album, and I don't like that song at all. It is hidden on both of those albums for me because I just hate that song. But a lot of the rest, like the features on here, are good, but mostly the non-features are actually the best ones outside of like Ratatata, you know? But either way, like Baby Metal's new album is another case of like, this is fun. You know, if I was rating it more technically, I would probably rate it like 3.5 stars instead of 4, but for just the sake of being fun and enjoyable and just something that I would totally listen to just for an engaging, fun time, Metal Fourth is going to be an album that I'll listen to for that purpose, kind of like Attack Attack. So both of these albums really connected for me just for being fun. Next up, we'll talk about Accused, Dealers of Doom, which was an album that I initially rated 5 out of 5 instead of 4.5 out of 5. I changed that rating retroactively. In fact, it was just this morning, or maybe last night, that I went ahead and changed the rating. But this is an album that I really, really, really enjoyed, like a lot. I can't really say much about this that I haven't said about several releases up to this point already. It's not the most new. It's not pushing the genre forward per se, but if you enjoy what this thing is doing, you're going to really click with the album, and that's how I felt. My only gripe about this album, to be honest, and the main reason why it's only 4.5 instead of 5 now, is because the first couple songs are like, they're good, you know, they're still really great, but they're just good. They're not great, whereas the rest of the album is great, in my opinion. But in either case, Dealers of Doom is fantastic. When I first listened to this, I was like, this is an easy top 5 contender for album of the year, and it stayed that way until very recently. And we'll be talking about those other 2 albums here right after this. So, you know, that's how it goes. But Dealers of Doom is like probably going to be top 10 at the end of the year. If this isn't in my top 10 albums at the end of the year, that would mean that 2025 is like an all-timer year for music for me. And as is, there's already several really great albums remaining, or 2 really great albums remaining that I want to talk about. I recommend Dealers of Doom a lot, but maybe not quite as much as these next couple of albums. And these next couple of albums I gave 5 out of 5 to. I don't know why that's there. Anyway, Signs of the Swarm is a band that I have a somewhat complicated relationship with, in that I think technically their 2 most popular albums, at least their 2 most popular albums based off of ratings on Music Board, are my least favorite albums by them. I like their 2019 album a good bit. I liked their 2021 album. It didn't make an album of the year list or anything like that for me, but I did enjoy it. Their 2019 album was one that, like, when I was getting into deathcore, was like, yeah, I enjoyed that for what it was a lot. I don't know how I would feel about that one in Relativity anymore. But back at that time, like 2019, I did not like the 2017 album when I listened to it. I just really didn't. And then their 2023 album, Amongst the Low and Empty, which I think might be their most popular album, actually. I did not connect with that a couple of years ago. I just really did not click with it. I have a ton of friends who really love it, and basically everywhere I see people talking about it, it's like with such incredible praise, and I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me, because I didn't love that album. I want to, but it didn't work for me as much as I wanted to. So I went into To Rid Myself with Truth with basically the expectation that like another Amongst the Low and Empty situation would happen, where it would be an album that, like, you know, I didn't really like very much, or definitely liked less than the rest of other people, but I turned out really liking it. I got through the first song and I was like, that was a solid opener. Got through the second song, like, that was even better. Got through the third song, that was like, this is still really great, and every single song was just so good, and it basically just got better as it went on. I was expecting to come out of this album with like maybe a 3 out of 5 at most, based off of how I felt with Amongst the Low and Empty, but To Rid Myself of Truth came out being a 5 out of 5. I was like, I did not dislike anything about this album at all. That really shocked me, so it definitely became an easy album of the year contender. This is now in the top 5, where Dealers of Doom is no longer in the top 5, and again, this is my second favorite album of the month. We Came as Romans, and this is the album that I've been having to hide down here with my face cam. I'll just go ahead and move it, because now I've talked about everything. To Rid Myself of Truth is down here now, but All Is Beautiful Because We're Doomed is what's been down here this entire time. I didn't want to spoil my album of the year the entire video, so that's what kind of motivated my decisions here. I need to make this a little bit smaller. But in either case, We Came as Romans is absolutely my favorite album of August, and it's very high up on my album of the year list. I reviewed on, I don't know if I talked about it on Music Mania, but I know I talked about it on Music Board here. We Came as Romans' last album, Dark Bloom. I kind of explained a little bit of a weird personal connection that I have with that album, and with We Came as Romans in general in regards to Kyle Pavone's death. But Dark Bloom was a record that's like hit or miss, like very hit or miss. I don't think, well, I guess there are a couple songs on there that I just straight up don't like. But outside of those couple songs, there's a few more songs that are just kind of okay. They're not really great. You know, they're fine for what they are. But what defines Dark Bloom for me is like the 5 or 6 tracks or somewhere thereabouts that are just stupendous. The ones that are really emotionally charged and geared towards like Kyle's death and the reaction to that, those kinds of things. Like Golden, for example, which I think was a single for that album. But songs along those lines that were like, yeah, this is really, really good stuff. Really special, where even though it's not pushing the boundaries or anything too super much, it was a heartfelt, really like something made with a lot of heart, and those songs were by far my favorites. But Dark Bloom as a whole, not my favorite. I might have only rated it like 3.5 overall, where the only reason it wasn't like 3 or 2.5 was just because of those handful of songs that are just amazing. That might be a little bit over harsh on Dark Bloom. It probably is, but like it's not a fantastic album outside of a handful of songs. This album, however, really blew me away. And that is because, I mean, I guess it's another case of like with Signs of the Swarm, where I kind of went in expecting it to be like somewhat similar to the last album in terms of my reception to it. And it surprised me. The only complaint I have about this record is that the introductory track just kind of feels out of place, and that like it doesn't flow into the rest of the album very well, whereas everything else like works side by side one another. So the introduction is just kind of random. But outside of that one singular gripe, every single song on this album is so good. You'll see my my favorite tracks on here, my standout tracks, and like this is a list of things when I'm listening to an album, I'll like kind of update as I'm listening to an album. It's like, oh yeah, this is a standout track. And then like a couple songs later, I'll be like, no, this one's a lot better than that one. So I'll take that one off. And like, I might retroactively put this one on because that one was a lot better than anything that's followed it. You know, I'm kind of going through and updating things as I go on. This was a case where every time I added a new song, and I kept on adding more songs, like just another one and another one and another one and another one, where there are only a few songs on the album that are not in my standout tracks lists. Those were the only ones that just I didn't put in here immediately. All of the ones that like halfway through the song I was like, this is standout, and put in there, they stayed there. Where I kind of updated which ones I marked as favorites as I went through, but I did not take any of these off the list because I did not feel like I could. I did not feel justified in doing that, because it's just so amazing. I really don't know how to explain why I like this album so much, other than to say that it's technically really good. The songwriting is really great. The melodies are incredible. Dave's vocals, especially with choruses, the choruses on this album are unbelievable. There's just so much about this record that works for me personally. I don't know why, but it just does. As far as We Came as Romans is concerned, I might have somewhat of a hot take with them as well. Their early work isn't my favorite, at least I haven't listened to it in a very long time, but most of what I'm connected to with We Came as Romans is like their more recent couple of albums, we'll say, or like their last couple of albums with Kyle, when they kind of went a little bit more of a poppy direction that a lot of people didn't particularly take to, but when I was getting into core at the time, that was what I enjoyed listening to a little bit more. At this point, I'm just too far disconnected from the band to be able to give any form of ranking of which of these albums by them are my favorites, or what I like the most from them, or whatever. Like, I could not do a discography ranking for these guys unless I listen to all their albums again right now. But All Is Beautiful Because We're Doomed, I'm 99% certain that even if it's not their best album, but I'm fairly convinced that I would think that if I listened to their entire discography right now, even if it's not their best album, it is my favorite album. I don't think that any of the others would exceed this one on a re-listen, which is kind of weird. It's kind of sad to say that, but like, huge props to these guys. I really, really loved this album. So I guess now that we've talked about all of the releases, let's talk about the ranking. And I just did the stupid thing again. So now that we've talked about all the actual releases themselves, let's look at the ranking here. Of course, this should have 21 releases on it. Kingdom of Giants should be here, I'm pretty sure, just below Call of Charon, I think, somewhere in this range. And then somewhere in this range is where Bleak would go, those two EPs that I can't put on the list until those pages actually start to work. But this is my ranking for all of the things that I listened to in August. It was just really solid, month, like super solid. I mean, to put things into perspective, 2 of my top 10 favorite EPs of the year in Sugar Spine and in Bleak are August releases, and 3 of my top 10 albums of the year are on August. We Came as Romans, Signs of the Swarm, and Accused are all top 10 albums of the year. And if you want to be a little bit more technical and like relate things a little bit more, 1/5 of my favorite EPs of the year, my top 10, are from August. 5 of my 25 favorite albums, again, 20%, a fifth of the albums of my favorite albums from 2025 are released in August. These top 5 here are all in my top 25 favorites of the year. That is just how good August was for me. And some of these are going to be hot takes, like Baby Metal and Attack here. Things like Deftones and Chevelle and To the Grave being so low. Like, some of these are probably not going to make certain people very happy. I don't really care. This is my list. This is my music tastes. This is how I feel. I really loved August. August was just an incredible music month for me. I loved it a lot. I'm very happy that I actually was following along with music a little bit more this month, and that I had the time to actually be able to listen to any of these things, because if all these things came out in July, I did not have the time in July. It was just, July was not a great music listening month at all, and I only listened to a handful of new releases, and there were only a handful of new releases to listen to. So like last month's Music Mania episode was definitely pretty light on content, and this one was very heavy on content. So as is, this video is way longer than I expected it to be, probably way longer than it needs to be. I apologize for that, but hey, there was a lot of things to talk about, and I thought that it was a great month for music. Thank you for watching this video if you did. You can go ahead and tell me about all of my incredibly terrible, bad takes down in the comments below if you would like. I would appreciate hearing from you. What were your favorite albums in August? I would definitely like to hear that. But thank you once again for watching. For now, I've been your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. But if not, in a month's time, I'll have another Music Mania episode ready for you guys again.